1845, two of the strongest exploration ships in the British Navy sailed toward the Arctic. They carried enough provisions for 3 years, reinforced hulls, steam-powered propellers, and an experienced commander. Their mission was to complete one of the greatest geographical challenges of the age, navigating the Northwest Passage through the frozen islands north of Canada. There were 129 men aboard. Not one returned. For years, the ships seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. When search parties finally discovered traces of the expedition, they found abandoned equipment, scattered human remains, and a single handwritten message revealing that something had gone terribly wrong. This is the story of Sir John Franklin's lost expedition. During the 19th century, European explorers had mapped much of the world, but the maze of islands and waterways across the Canadian Arctic remained difficult to navigate. For centuries, sailors had searched for a northern sea route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Such a route could shorten voyages between Europe and Asia and bring enormous commercial and strategic advantages. The British Admiralty believed that only a relatively small portion of the Northwest Passage remained unexplored. The man chosen to complete it was Sir John Franklin. Franklin was 59 years old and had already led 2 Arctic land expeditions. Although one of those journeys had ended in starvation and disaster, he had become famous in Britain for his endurance. Under his command were HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Both ships had already survived a demanding expedition to Antarctica. Their wooden hulls were reinforced to withstand pressure from the ice. Each vessel had been fitted with a converted steam engine and a retractable propeller, allowing it to move without wind when necessary. The ships had internal heating systems, scientific instruments, and large quantities of preserved food. By the standards of the time, the expedition appeared exceptionally well prepared. On May 19, 1845, Erebus and Terror departed England. They crossed the Atlantic and stopped at Greenland, where supplies were transferred and 5 men were sent home. In late July, crews from 2 whaling ships saw Franklin's vessels waiting for favorable conditions in Baffin Bay. It was the last confirmed sighting of the expedition by Europeans. Franklin's ships entered the channels of the Canadian Arctic and sailed west. During their first winter from 1845 to 1846, the expedition remained at Beechey Island. 3 sailors died there: John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Braine. Their bodies were buried in the frozen ground beneath carefully marked wooden headboards. At the time, the deaths of 3 men might not have appeared catastrophic. Arctic expeditions were extremely dangerous, and illness was common. When summer arrived, Erebus and Terror continued south and west. Then, in September 1846, both ships became trapped in sea ice near King William Island. They would never sail freely again. The crew spent the winter aboard the ships, expecting the ice to break apart during the following summer. It did not. The vessels remained trapped throughout 1847. Life aboard an icebound wooden ship was cold, crowded, and monotonous. During the dark Arctic winter, the sun disappeared for months. Temperatures could fall far below freezing, while storms and shifting ice surrounded the vessels. The men depended almost entirely on the supplies they had carried from Britain. Their preserved food included thousands of metal cans. Some were reportedly prepared in haste because the supplier had received the contract only shortly before the expedition departed. For many years, researchers suspected that poorly soldered cans exposed the men to dangerous amounts of lead. High lead levels were later found in some recovered remains. However, more recent studies have complicated this theory. The men may already have accumulated lead throughout their lives from sources common in 19th century Britain. Lead exposure could have affected their health, but there is not enough evidence to blame the expedition's destruction on lead poisoning alone. The disaster was probably caused by several problems acting together. The men faced extreme cold, exhaustion, and a shrinking food supply. Fresh meat and vegetables were limited, increasing the risk of malnutrition and scurvy. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and other illnesses may also have spread among the crew, and sometime during this ordeal, their commander died. Sir John Franklin died on June 11, 1847. The exact cause remains unknown. Command passed to Captain Francis Crozier of HMS Terror, with Captain James Fitzjames of HMS Erebus serving as another senior leader. Still, the ships remained imprisoned. By April 1848, Erebus and Terror had been trapped for more than a year and a half. The surviving officers made a desperate decision. They would abandon the ships and attempt to reach safety on foot. The nearest possible source of help was hundreds of kilometers away. To reach it, the men would have to cross King William Island, travel south along the coast, and follow the back river toward a distant trading post. They would be dragging heavy boats and supplies across broken sea ice, snow, rock, and frozen ground. Many were already sick and weak. Before leaving, the officers placed a message inside a stone cairn at Victory Point. The document had originally been deposited in May 1847 and reported that all was well. Nearly 1 year later, Crozier and Fitzjames added a grim update around its margins. The ships had been abandoned on April 22, 1848. Sir John Franklin was dead. 9 officers and 15 other men had also died. That meant 105 survivors were preparing to march south. The note ended by stating that they would begin their journey the following day. It was the expedition's final known written message. What happened next must be reconstructed from physical evidence and Inuit testimony. Searchers later found human remains and equipment scattered along the western and southern coasts of King William Island. At one location, they discovered a ship's boat mounted on a heavy wooden sledge. Inside were 2 skeletons and a strange collection of objects. There were boots, dice, books, soap, tea, tobacco, guns, and large amounts of ammunition. There were also items that seemed almost useless during a desperate survival march, including silverware and other personal possessions. The discovery raised a disturbing question. Why were starving men using precious energy to drag such a heavy load? Perhaps the boat had originally been prepared for a different purpose. Perhaps discipline had broken down. Or perhaps the men were so weakened and confused that they could no longer make rational decisions. Other evidence revealed an even darker final stage. Inuit witnesses told 19th century searchers that they had encountered starving white men dragging a boat southward. Some later reported seeing bodies and signs that the survivors had consumed human flesh. Victorian Britain initially reacted with outrage. Many people refused to believe that officers and sailors of the Royal Navy could have resorted to cannibalism. But examinations of bones recovered from the expedition route found cut marks consistent with the removal of flesh. Later research identified breakage patterns, suggesting that some bones had been deliberately cracked or processed to reach the marrow inside. The evidence indicates that at least some members of the expedition resorted to cannibalism during their final struggle to survive. It was not enough. Every member of the expedition died. For more than 160 years, the locations of Erebus and Terror remained unknown. Generations of searchers tried to find them. Crucially, Inuit oral histories repeatedly described ships that had sunk in areas south of where many European searchers expected them to be. In 2014, a Canadian search team discovered HMS Erebus on the seabed near the Adelaide Peninsula. 2 years later, HMS Terror was found in Terror Bay. Both ships were located remarkably far from the position where the crews had reportedly abandoned them. This created another mystery. Did some of the survivors return to the ships and attempt to sail them south? Did drifting ice carry the empty vessels away, or did separate groups make different decisions after leaving? The wreck of Terror was found in exceptionally good condition. Its hull was largely intact, and investigations revealed plates, bottles, furniture, and scientific equipment still inside. Franklin's own cabin aboard Erebus has also become a major focus for archaeologists. Cold Arctic water and sediment may have preserved documents or personal objects capable of answering questions that have remained unresolved since 1848. But even with the ships found, no single explanation accounts for every detail. The expedition was not destroyed by one dramatic event. There was no confirmed shipwreck that instantly killed the crews, and no single disease that explains all 129 deaths. Instead, the men appear to have been trapped within a slow-moving catastrophe. Their ships were immobilized for years. Their commander died. Their health deteriorated. Supplies became less useful as the men weakened, and the decision to escape forced them into one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The expedition possessed some of the best British technology of its time, but technology could not free the ships from the ice. And the men's European training did not prepare them as effectively for survival in the region as the knowledge developed by Inuit communities over generations. Franklin's expedition did help complete the mapping of the Northwest Passage, but none of its members lived to claim the achievement. They sailed into the Arctic expecting fame. Instead, they left behind 3 graves, 1 final note, 2 sunken ships, and a trail of evidence stretching across the frozen landscape. 129 men entered the Arctic, and for more than a century, the ice kept almost all of their secrets